Welcome back, everybody. Today we're testing the new Motiv Crimson Jackal.
If you like what we do, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and check us out on Patreon.
First impressions, it's very rare for a ball with a Jackal name to disappoint, and the Crimson continues the trend of impressive shapes. Okay, we again have the Predator V2 core inside a new Pearl cover called the Propulsion HV Plus Pearl Reactive. This is not the first Pearl Jackal. We had the Jackal Flash and Mythic Jackal, and while they are all Pearl ASIMs, the Crimson is probably the quote new and improved. Now, a lot of times that commercial moniker is pretty gimmicky. In this case, I'd say big picture, the Crimson is marginally improved, but sometimes that's all you really need to turn, say, a mediocre ball to a pretty good ball or a pretty good ball to a great one. In this case, I think the improvement made is worthwhile if you don't have a shiny Jackal already in your bag. What this formula does is allow you to get a big core on the lane with a relatively clean look. But I think this is a bit more rolly and stronger than the Mythic, and I would say a bit more angular than the Flash. So it's a touch stronger than both the others, but somewhere in between in terms of shape, which is probably a Goldilocks if I'm being honest. We liked both previous balls, but this one would be my preferred if I had to choose between the three. This was particularly walled shot. It was extra slick on the left side for some reason. Nevertheless, I found a nice slot with the Crimson, and shape is so predictable. And this was really the word of the day. I think that's telling when a frequently used word is predictable, even while the ball is shiny. And despite the pattern being on the slick side from the left, the Crimson Jackal was the best match of all the Motiv balls I had on hand. I'll just run a comparison video separately, but here's a quick look at the other balls. The Forge Fury struggled being too much up front and not being able to generate pop with the muddy mid lane. Just too round overall, which was a little surprising to be honest. The Pride Dynasty was even earlier and looked worse since it couldn't generate the angles needed but was too strong for me to get too far left. Now, the Primal, with its cleaner cover, had a better chance of carrying the light hit, and while it didn't look great, it did work enough. And really, this is one of these times when matchup is completely relevant in a topic for another video. But what I will say is the Crimson Jackal gave me a very good look on this pattern. Now, with Tyler, I'd say the Crimson looked even better. I'll say that on this test pair, the right side was more normal for what we typically see, while the left, like I said, really played oddly, which was even more impressive with the Crimson, to be honest. Anyway, this was a really great look for him as a shiny ASIM. What's great is that despite being a shiny Pearl, it was very predictable. Again, there's that word. While some may take quote predictable as maybe archy or overly smooth, that's not how I would describe this ball. The big volume Predator core just seemed to get in a roll at a consistent or predictable time that even a shiny Pearl couldn't fight. And it didn't fight it. It simply complemented its shape. Truly the first clean cover I would honestly consider a shiny Jackal Ghost shape. The chemistry has to be right, between the cover and the core. And it may not be obvious how strong this ball is, but it does feel like a ball that could be used on higher volumes even while being shiny, because it really just has enough combined strength between the cover and the core. I really hope the longer term look gives us the same feeling as the initial test. Tyler didn't have to get super deep, meaning beyond the fourth arrow, which is a good thing on a walled shot. That tends to create more over-under going in and out of the volumes, to dry, right? So remember, strength doesn't equal board coverage. It refers to volume coverage. And many times stronger balls will be a little more direct. So, quick look at next to the Forge Fury. And actually, in this case, you see the shape is not very far away. It's just a bit earlier and a touch rounder. Then he pulls out the Pride Dynasty, and you can see it covers about the same boards, but does it very differently with a much earlier and smoother roll. Also meant that if he leaked it out, it wasn't going to recover. Brian's up next, and the Crimson Jackal was a pretty good matchup for a shiny asymmetric. As you expect, there's good length and a smooth, again, predictable backhand move. He was lined up just right of the second arrow, getting the ball to 8-9 at the arrows. The ball had a nice smooth arc to the pocket with solid carry percentage. If he trickled it to the right, it reacted or responded a bit harder and it finished flush with more angle through the pins. So, the nice thing is he wasn't really trapped with the crimson. He could even move further left, open up the lanes a touch, so say like a 3-2 move and still get the ball back. It really made him comfortable, and he was allowed to, able to execute balls even better. The strongish pearl cover really played a very nice complement to the strong core, which just gave this ball more versatility than I was expecting. Again, to get an idea of how the balls in the lineup compare, here's the Forge Fury, and you can immediately see the earlier roll and similar backhand, which meant it went high, and he needed to move further left to find the pocket. Now remember, Brian is closer to the friction line in general. Now the Pride Dynasty was so early that it didn't have enough energy retention. In other words, he had to move right and chase the smooth, archy shape to the pocket. The Primal Shock looked at home where Brian started with the crimson, so I would say it's maybe a board or two less ball overall. Just some closing thoughts. The Crimson Jackal from Motiv is a very solid piece, fitting squarely in the mid-defined slot in the bag with a typical shiny ASIMs. The big difference with this one and others, including the Mythic, is we found the Crimson a touch more predictable, and that made each bowler very comfortable with the shape they saw on the lanes.